Howdy Makers Church. This is Testimony Tuesday. I'm Pastor Glenn.
And I'm Mark, and this week we have two guests for the price of one this week. So we really want to welcome. It's a huge privilege to welcome Drew Baer and Luis Ortega to Testimony Tuesday. Hi guys, thank you so much for being here. Great to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. In PG, I just wanted to ask real quick. Have you ever heard of LeBron James when he says Taco Tuesday? He's like, Taco Tuesday. Sounds just like you. You guys are like twins.
That's it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
I hate to say this, but I ripped off, shamelessly, this from a guy, a vlogger that reviews cars. And so he goes, this is a certain car. So it's not original to me, but Taco Tuesday sounds great. And it is Tuesday, right? So, Mark, meeting with these guys last week and hearing their stories, I was just overwhelmed with how diverse their life experiences have been, how amazing their Christian journeys have been. I wish we had time to tell their stories. But one thing they kept saying over and over again was how much they loved the Makers Men Ministry. And you're going to talk about this in a minute, but one thing they kept saying over and over again is they had to say no to some good things so they could focus on just that. And so that's going to be the majority of what we're going to be talking about here today. But before we do, there was a couple of things that we heard in our conversation that really jumped out at me, and that is how both of them came to know Jesus. So men, talk to us. How did you come to know Jesus?
I can go first. So it actually started for me when I was in second grade. My mom, I know the exact location. I was in the mobile trailer with my mom. My mom was single at the time, and she told me the story of Jesus. And I remember saying, I don't really know everything about Jesus, but I'm going to accept him as my savior and get to know him and develop a relationship. And as soon as I said that, I just felt this immediate weight come off of my shoulders. And granted, I was in second grade, like you don't really have a whole lot of pressure in second grade, but it was just this additional deep, just removal of pressure. And it was amazing. So that was kind of my coming into a relationship with Jesus.
And I love the fact that you can still remember that time, that moment. That's precious. Yeah. How about you, Luis?
Well, my experience really, I grew up in Mexico, or was born in Mexico, came over here, and we have a lot of Mexicans are really deeply, Catholic. And when we came over here, we really weren't practicing so much Catholicism. We just went whenever we had to go. So then from there, growing all the way up till I was an adult, and actually I was with Amanda and we were dating at the time. And we started going out, and we started going to, to the PB and to all these different areas where, what you're doing out there. And it wasn't probably what God wanted me to do, but I was doing it, and I was doing it well. But I was, but we were going, and then next, one night, one of our friends that we were going out with every night, they were our drinking buddies, and one of them said, you know what, I got to cut it in a little short tonight because I have a friend of mine at work that invited me to church. And so we were like, oh man, really? You got to go in, come on, you can't stop. And then he said, you know what, I got to stop. And I said, how about this? I'll make you a deal. I said, if you stay out with us, we'll go to church with you tomorrow morning. And that's when he was like, really? Okay, so we'll suffer together. Let's go. Yes. So we did. So the next morning we went. I wasn't feeling great, but we went to the Rock Church, and I was like, wow, like looking at the Rock. I mean, for one thing, Amanda never grew up really going to the church. She kind of also family was Catholic, but her dad was atheist, and kind of just didn't really go at it much at all. So I went, I'm like, man, this is a show. What is going on over here? Did we really come to church, or is this a rock show? What's going on? So we ended up going, and we kept going, and I'll cut this a little shorter. We kept going over time, and more and more, just Jesus kept touching our hearts. The next thing you know, I'm sitting there with Amanda, and we probably didn't really talk too deeply about this yet. And we're sitting there, and then there's this sermon that just hits me. I mean, it hits me hard. Next thing you know, I say, okay, we bow our heads, and he does an altar call. And I just said to myself, if I stand up and she's not standing up, what's going to happen?
Right.
What's the next step of our relationship? If I stand up and she does not agree with me right now, this might be it. So this is a bigger commitment, but it was a sermon that told me I am who I am. And it also told me that I'm supposed to be, this is my role, that I'm supposed to be doing this. Yes. So I stood up and I said, okay, I'm going to open up my eyes. And when he said, everyone open up your eyes and come to the front. And I looked over to my right and Amanda was standing up as well. And she didn't know. So that was our coming to Christ.
Shout out to Amanda Ortega over there.
Man, absolutely. That is awesome.
I just love the different ways, the amazing ways that God reveals himself to us all in different ways, different times of our life. Obviously for you, Drew, as a young boy in a very kind of simple situation there, with your mom, and with you, Luis, in a much more sort of quote unquote flashy or big, kind of setting. And yet both of those profound experiences of meeting Jesus, and that's just awesome. And so both of you guys found your way to Makers, and I think that Yelp had a part to play in that. I think, and
God bless Yelp.
Yes, thank you, Lord, for Yelp. Yeah, and I know you've both had different roles at Makers, but have just felt this powerful and passionate call to men's ministry. And as Glenn was saying, you've stepped down from other things so that you can be laser focused really on the men's ministry. So why is it, guys, that you are so fired up and passionate about men's ministry?
Yeah, Luis, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think we're fired up for men's ministry just because the more and more we involve ourselves in and we start reading into the book and into the word, we just start to think there's a specific reason that we're here. There's something that we're supposed to be doing. And as men, we just were looking for something that we can, come together. And when I was doing it, I just had it at my house, and Drew Baer came, and all these other wonderful men came, and but I think that that's a big part of why we were looking for it, is just because we wanted to grow as men of Christ.
Yes.
Yeah. And just to add on that, I think another reason why I'm so passionate about the men's ministry is because our children, women, and families are suffering without men standing up for God. You look at the facts out there. 70% of all prisoners in the United States are come from a fatherless home. 40% of children in America are born to single parents. 80% of rapists come from a fatherless home, and 74% of high school dropouts come from a fatherless home or an absent father. And so it's just insane.
If we want to do something right, we got to go to the root of the cause.
Absolutely. And I know you've mentioned too, just about part of the sort of desire you have in just seeing sort of men who in some way have been wounded, by the church or in different experiences like that, also to bring some sense of healing to those people. And I know you said there was something that you talked about. One guy was saying to you that this is my last chance to test that Jesus is real, kind of thing. That whole idea. So it's healing men who have just been wounded.
Yeah, exactly. There's a couple of guys that one in particular who said that exact same phrase, Mark, which was this is my last shot at giving a relationship with Jesus a chance. And we've had other guys come in our group that are homeless and that are on their last dollar. And Jesus is really this group has really been this group focused on Jesus has really been their kind of main thing in their week. So it's been very rewarding and humbling.
And I know one of the things that you mentioned last week, Drew, when we were talking with you, and just the very first thing you said when we asked you, well, tell us a little bit about yourself, Drew. And the first thing you said was, I'm a kingdom man. And I know that that's a real crucial theme of the men's ministry. So tell us about that. Tell us what it is. What is a kingdom man?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. In its simplest form, a kingdom man is a male who has learned to live his life under the leadership of Jesus, right? So where we first go, a kingdom man first goes to Jesus and asks him, okay, what do you want me to do in the 5 areas of my life, which are spiritual, relational, physical, intellectual, and then financial. And so in all those 5 areas, we're essentially where we spend the majority of our time in life.
Yes.
So when you go to Jesus first in those areas, that makes you a kingdom man. And so there's a lot of males in our society, but there's not a lot of men. And God wrote the owner book, or the owner's manual on how to be a man, because he made men. And the fact that we were so dumb to not follow the owner's manual, he had to send down Jesus to give us a living, breathing example of what it means to be a man. So
if you don't know that manual, then you think that your manual is by a human being that's flawed.
Yes.
So that father figure, maybe coach or whoever it was, could have done great things in certain ways of thinking, but man, sometimes they're flawed with how we're supposed to be and how what to take that next step as a man, or what is a man. Then for me, a lot of machismo was put into my heart, and that's something that it's kind of interesting to see that. So it's great what Drew said.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Glenn.
So what do you guys, you guys have your finger on the pulse of this. What do you think the big challenges that men are facing with right now here in this age that we're in? What are you hearing?
Yeah, like I was telling you guys when we talked before, I think men suffer from what I call the Scarface syndrome, which is the movie Scarface. And the main actor, Al Pacino, Tony Montana, he is in Miami, and he's from Cuba. He's in Miami with his right-hand man, Manny. And they're talking about what it takes to be successful in the United States. And Tony Montana says, first you need to get the money, then you need to get the power, then you need to get the women. And if you look at our culture, that's exactly what's playing out right now. Women are thought of as last. They don't get paid as much as men. They're thought of as objects. Men all invest their time into their career, and that's what their identity is, because they try to get financial capital, so that they feel powerful and they feel like they are something. So I think that's a huge challenge, is that men don't understand that they're being conditioned to what a false man should be.
Even on that, just going to like what me and Drew are very passionate about, is like, you see what guys look at on social media, you see what they're really kind of being magnetized to, they're being drawn to, and it's all this, there's this negative influence of what we have to do as men, what we have to look like as men, what we have to believe in, and all these things, and we almost have to be the outsiders in this case.
There's no role models.
There's no role models.
Absolutely, because I think that whole thing, you're talking about before, but being a kingdom man, with just putting Jesus first over everything, over all of those different aspects, and those pressures, those pressures that that we all feel, as men.
Looking at Mark's sermon this last Sunday, he was talking about vengeance. Every good man wants to have vengeance. All the movies I watch that I cheer on are about vengeance. And he was talking about the need to forgive. And I was wondering, how do you think that really impacts men as far as being able to forgive, or that type of thing? Anything that jumps out at you from men?
Yeah, Luis, you want to go?
Yeah, I think for men, it's really tough to forgive sometimes, because we have a big ego and a pride thing. So that comes in, hand in hand with, for my culture, was a lot of machismo. You don't want to give in. You don't want to be.
Wait, hey, Luis, before you go, for those of us that don't know machismo, what does that mean? Because I'll be the first to admit I don't know. I think it means macho. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's basically. It's
okay, cool.
It's like macho, being too macho, being strong, being powerful,
Cool.
So now you threw me off, man.
That's all right.
No, I think that I think the fact that that is a struggle with us, because we don't like to forgive, because then it means that we have to say we're wrong at times. And then when we don't have to say we're wrong, is we've been wronged, and we don't want to come back and say, man, you did something wrong to me. I want you to I forgive you. That's something hard for us to do without our fist, without, how what we normally would think is a normal way to respond.
I mean, forgiveness is a wonderful word when you need it for yourself, but it's a difficult word when you need to give it to somebody else, right? Like, and when in order for you to truly I think from my perspective, the only way for you to be able to give forgiveness to somebody is you need to know the truth, because when you know the truth, it changes the way you think. When you change the way you think, it changes the way you feel. When you change the way you feel, it changes the way you act, right? And one of my favorite quotes, and Luis knows this from one of my favorite apologists, the late great Ravi Zacharias.
Oh yeah.
He said, you can't be a genuine human without acknowledging the intrinsic worth given to every human being. My respect for the other person is not based on what they believe about me, but what I believe about them.
Wow.
And that's what you believe about other people is the truth, which is God died, Jesus died for all of us because we are intrinsically valuable.
Yeah, I think Pastor Mark was, I think, sort of addressing some of those things. I think that in that message, which was just so great, and I think, just those things that just sort of going back to just some of those things that men feel pressure about these days. That's particularly that sort of pressure just to sort of work, and it's that machismo thing too. To be driven, to be tough, just to the sort of philosophy of we'll rest when we're dead, kind of thing. We'll just keep going, that drive. So how do you guys find that you address that, that kind of whole issue with men and that sort of drive, work kind of thing?
Wow, that's a whole nother lesson in itself. But I mean, honestly, Luis and I actually had this conversation about a year ago, to this day, when we were at a coffee shop across the street from Makers. And, my last job, I was performing really well, and God was blessing me with a lot of financial success. And then I was also co-leading the men's group with Louise. I was doing the kids ministry. Shout out to Kayla and the kids ministry. I was also doing Alpha. I was co-leading an Alpha table. And so my time was just so much full of things. And I looked across to Luis and I was like, Luis, like, where are the guys our age that are having conversations around how are they putting Jesus first while still aspiring a career, while still trying to focus on building a family? Like, where is that? And we couldn't find anybody. So that kind of led us to dive into creating a podcast that we'll get into later to talk about. But that's a core topic question that we always ask ourselves, and we ask the men when we really go to when we study the men in the Bible with our men's group.
Yeah. It always comes down to you see it in social media, you see it in all these other ways, even at work. Sometimes it's grind till you die. You a guy that's younger than you and he's just going at it, and you're like, man, I need to step up. I need to keep up with this younger guy that's 20 and he doesn't have any family and he's just going at it. I mean, but that's where he sees it, is in that community. They're saying grind, but in reality, it's funny because going back to how usually typically like we'll just say a Mexican household, the father usually is supposed to work 12 hours, however many hours a day, but that even though that father might not be home, or might still be home, might still be married, is not really present. So that's the one I had to learn the hardest. Is I was taught to work for my family, to, even if Amanda stayed home, like it was just grind. But then I started realizing, wait, I don't want to be the non-present father. Like, that's what I'm doing. That's what's happening, is my kids are seeing me go off to work and they don't see me come back till night. And it's just, it's something that's, it's true. And we have to remember the thought that me and Drew came up with is really, we have to take Sabbath. We have to rest. That's what God wanted us to do. So if we're really truly kingdom men, we have to know when to rest.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the challenges. Again, I know you talked about this last week as well, but the challenge, just for men to really be to be stepping up, to be present, to be those present fathers. And maybe, a lot of us have had different experiences, with our own sort of lives, with that. And that could be one of those areas where we need to forgive. We need to maybe forgive a father, or forgive ourselves or whatever. But I think just, the stepping up to be the good fathers, the good husbands, in that, in the pressure that there is, in society, and that's I think that's a challenge. So thank you guys just for for really speaking it and for addressing it, with the guys. So
you guys said no to everything. You clear the decks, and then you're focused on the men's ministry. So tell us about that. I mean, what's the Makers Men group look like? What if I was to come and see what you guys are doing, what would I see?
Louis, hit it.
Oh man, you keep throwing me out. Okay.
The pressure.
Right. So
yeah.
So,
I'll take next one.
So when you come to the men's group, it's not you're gonna walk in. You're most likely, and it's not like we're making this a priority for men, but the men that are in our group right now are very open to meeting new people. So when men come in, they're automatically like, hey, what's your name? And it's not like that weird, creepy, kind of stuff. It's just a very sincere, wow, like hey, come on in, come join us. And what you're going to see is really a group of men that are going to be very honest with each other. And that's the main thing that we love about this, is that if you don't agree with something, it doesn't mean that you're going to get attacked from different angles. It's actually, everyone's going to come up with, well, I know this part behind that story. I know that this, this apostle was this way, and this one was this way because that's how they wrote. So maybe there's a lot of things that when the guys will come to this group, Glenn, if you came, for one, you're going to be loved on. Second, we're going to go deep into the book together as a group, and we're going to find out how to be kingdom men together. So it's not going to be I know how to be a kingdom man and you don't, and we're going to teach you. It's, hey, this is what we're learning. Like, we're learning how to be kingdom men and how to take it back. So for me personally, it's really been a going back to the table. Okay. Going back to the table. Now, Drew, if you remember this, man, this is like where it hit a lot of us here at the men's group, because some of us are fathers and some of us aren't, but it really kind of broke it down because it made you think of your childhood as well. And going back to the table, just what that means is that when you take your family to the table is the most important part. You're going to bring all the conversations to the table. You're going to bring your kids to the table whenever you can. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or breakfast and dinner. And you're going to have a conversation with those kids. You're going to have a conversation with your spouse if you have no kids, or you're going to have a conversation with yourself or with Jesus at that table. And whenever anything comes up, it goes back to that table. And those are the rules that we were taught. And it's very important that we have to be open and talking with our family, because then when we don't talk to our kids, then we don't know what happens and why it happened. And that's when you start hearing the parents say, well, I didn't know my kid was thinking of doing that. Well, I didn't know I didn't know Susie was going to do that, or Johnny was going to do that. So that's a little bit of what like the core of our group is really meant to try to help each other grow.
And what's it look like?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like physically?
Yeah. We got guys that are very diverse. So we have Indian, Samoan, Hispanic, Luis. I'm biracial, black and white. We have other black men in our group. We have guys that are like 22 to all the way up to, I don't want to name names, but I think they're in like mid-60s. So, and some are homeless, some are doctors, some are entrepreneurs. Some just like to mooch off of people like me on Luis. I'm mooching on him all the time. So,
and I think you were saying that at different stages of their Christian journey as well. I think that's an awesome thing, particularly as obviously the whole thing that we've been looking at over the last month with all sort of the different racial issues and everything, the fact that right there in the men's ministry is such an example of racial diversity and also just diversity of Christian experience in terms of where people are at in their journey. So I think that's brilliant. I think it's awesome. Yeah.
Jesus met people where they were at, right? So
Yes.
that's what we try to do.
Yes. Yeah. And you've been studying the lives of men in the Bible. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, like we've been talking about Kingdom Men. Like we first took them through a series from Pastor Tony Evans. He's a preacher in Dallas, Texas. He has a series on Kingdom Men. So we went through that, and then from there, it's like, okay, now we know the foundations of Kingdom Men. Let's actually go to the Word and look at the men God used as Kingdom Men to bring His will on earth. And so we studied the life of David. We studied the life of Joseph, and now we're in the middle of studying the life of Daniel.
Cool.
That's so great. And I love the fact too that the Bible is so honest in the way that it describes the people that God used, who were so flawed. And when you think of someone like David, you know, who sort of messed up in such huge ways, but was still described as a man after God's own heart, you know. And I think that kind of gives encouragement for us all, that yes, you know, God can still use us no matter what our past has been. I think Mark talked about that in the sermon, you know, that we don't have to be defined, you know, by our past, you know, that God wants to sort of use us. So that's brilliant, you guys. How have you guys been kind of keeping connected with the guys during COVID?
Yeah, I'll answer this one because Luis has been throwing off it. Just playing, brother. So at the start of quarantine, we were doing Zoom conference, 1 hour conference calls, and just kind of checking in with everybody.
Let me back up. What was it like before COVID? So where were you meeting and how did that work?
Yeah, we meet Monday nights, every Monday night. We haven't really taken a Monday off since we started at Makers.
So where were you meeting before? Were you at church?
Peterson
Okay.
Hall in church. Yep.
Okay.
7
So then
p.m.
COVID hit, and then what happened?
And then we went to Zoom, and we had just finished studying the life of Joseph. So Luis and I kind of wrapped up a mini podcast recap series that you were part of, Glenn, just kind of reviewing the life of Joseph. And so then after that, Luis and I felt like we really needed to continue to push these guys and ourselves to study the Word and discuss it among other men. And so that's what brought us to studying the life of Daniel. And we've been meeting in person for the past 2 weeks through social distancing at Peterson Hall at Makers Church.
That's great.
Man.
And have you been doing some things? You did some things in the park, didn't you? I think at one point.
Yeah. We did some time in the park, but we came to realize that some of the guys get distracted really easy.
Squirrel.
Yeah, you get a squirrel. You get a nice little bike.
Yeah.
You get a hot rod.
It's summertime, okay? Like that's all we got to say.
That's so funny. We're not very good multitaskers. We just get distracted really easily. Yeah, that's funny.
Morgana, but I got to come and see this. This sounds great to me. But tell us, guys, we're running out of time. But tell us about your visions for the future for the men's group. What are you looking for to do? You mentioned the podcast, the getting together. Talk to us about the future. Because you got some big ideas here. These guys are not just sitting there thinking, they've got some big ideas. So tell us about these big ideas.
Yeah, well, one, we're still meeting 7 p.m. on Mondays at Peterson Hall. You can reach out to Luis and myself either by going onto the website at Makers and going to the men's section to sign up. We also have, like you said, Glenn, a podcast coming out called Follow the Throne, which is really essentially a podcast that shares strategies on how aspiring Christian millennial entrepreneurs or businessmen find success at work, home, and in life by living out the lessons of Jesus. And
wow. Now that really attracts me. So how do you get onto that?
Yeah. So we have a website that's called Follow the Throne.
Follow the Throne.
.co. So there's no M, it's just CO. And it's a landing page to sign up for our email newsletter. And we'll notify you once we launch the podcast later this month. So yeah, that's where you can find us. And at the same time, we're every Monday night. We are either on the Zoom or we're on Peterson Hall.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and if you do come Monday nights, wear a mask. So come with a mask. You know, we won't have any, we usually had food and stuff like that out, but we won't really have too much. If it's packaged separately, we'll have that, but we have it all set up, guys. So if you are, you know, worried about the 6 feet distancing and all that stuff, everyone's going to wear a mask. Drew's usually the one that's just drilling people that aren't wearing masks. And then, we got, you know, everyone's sitting 6 feet apart. So we're trying
well, you guys are so magnetic. I mean, your relationship is super attractive.
That's so great. And just, I know we probably need to finish off, but I know there was just one thing I remember just in our conversation, you know, last week, just that really hit me too, was just that challenge, the way you're challenging men to step up to do the right thing. I think you described it in those ways, to step up to do the right thing, whether that's in their careers, whether that's in their relationships, whether that's, you know, as husbands, fathers, or if you're single, you know, whatever kind of relationships in your personal life, but just that challenge. I just really love that honest, very, very honest challenge to step up to do the right thing. So I wanted to throw that in before we sign off.
Yeah. So true.
So Drew, I mean,
it's called radical candor, where you care deeply, but you challenge directly. And that's what we do. Radical candor at our group.
Yes. Yeah. Love that. Yeah.
well,
I'm biting my tongue because I know we don't have that much time. So I'm like,
listen,
go ahead.
We've gone so much over, it doesn't matter. So just keep going. So
go ahead, Luis.
Where you want? Talk to us.
okay, here we go.
Yeah,
Please.
The spirit's coming.
The spirit.
Yeah, that's it.
Do it.
Yeah.
No. What I was going to say is, you know, on what you said, specifically challenging men, because look, we can sit here and go to church. We can sit here and go to church every week, every other week, not maybe on, like, you know, the holidays or whenever you go. But what the thing that we have to realize is that if we are going every week, and if we really want to take the next step, you're not going to be able to just take that next step with just going to church. Start getting involved. You have to start going to these groups, and even if it's not ours, or maybe even if you have an idea for a group, bring it. Like, this is where you step up, and you have to kind of be the man that you're supposed to be. Okay. And I'm going to be like Drew said, it's calling you out. It's Coach Luis coming out right here, and I'm just going to call you out, and I'm going to say, be the man that you're supposed to be, because God made you that way.
Yes.
God made us all kingdom men. And what we're supposed to do is just come up to leadership and say, you know what, this is what we're going to do. This is what we want to do. And if you really do feel it, and I know a lot of guys do feel it in their heart that they want to change something. They don't want to just give into the culture.
Yes.
They want to be kingdom men. They want to be spirit led. Then this is your time to step up.
Yeah. And can I say something else, Glenn? Or you can edit this out. But I don't know why, but before this conversation this afternoon, I kept going to this verse in Romans 12, which said, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world. You know? And it was like you were saying, be kingdom men. And I love that there's a translation by an old English guy called J.B. Phillips, who says that same verse is, do not let the world squeeze you into its own mold. And I think that's the pressure that we have, you know, the pressure that we to be squeezed into the mold that the world would want, as opposed to, no, we're going to be kingdom men that live by what Jesus has said, and by the just everything, the ways that the Spirit wants to lead us, to be kingdom men, and not how the world would see things. So well, so maybe there was a reason why that verse has been in my head all day today.
I hate to say it's the end, but we gotta stop someplace. But man, I am you've motivated me.
What?
Go ahead.
Yes, Luis, go. Keep going.
I was joking. It was a joke.
You've motivated me. Trust me, I'm fired up. I want to come. I'm going to be a part. So I definitely, we want every man that's listening to this to be a part of this. I want you to contact these guys. I'm excited what the future is. It is. I'm so thankful that you men have got Jesus as your ultimate example, and that you are centered around Jesus. I think great things are going to happen in our men's group, even though they already are. So, got to say goodbye. Thank you, men, for being on here. Adios, amigos.
Peace.
Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you, guys. God bless you and what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye-bye.